So let me ask you, in this day and age, right, as a leader at this school, what we just talked about, right, with the anxiety, how do you lead? How can you direct, the children from the ages where they are till they leave this school, with the systems that you have in place to go into this world with those principles and values?
Yeah, I think it's getting harder because we have lots of different cultural backgrounds, and there are different standards and expectations in different cultures. There are different, families and structures within families where there are different guidelines. So when you come to a school, the school's almost become like the central hub that brings that diversity together and tries to make it one and tries to create a sense of kind of unity and belonging. So I think what I've tried to do is create a school culture, a set of values, and a set of guidelines and consequences that help us to understand who we are together and what we need to be together in order to function well as a community. And hopefully that the boys will take some of that and reshape the communities that they may be responsible in time. I think what you have to do with that, you have to name those things, you have to teach those things and explain why, because often they're challenged, especially young adolescent boys love to challenge anything that you put in front of you, but that's a good thing, right? Challenge is great. It helps you articulate and refine what you're doing, and then you have to maintain the lines or the boundaries, and that's the hardest piece, because that's where you have fights with people, and nobody wants to have a fight. So we don't talk about punishment here; we talk about consequences. And so, if the view is, you don't walk along and throw your food on the ground, because that would be disrespectful for the person who is employed to clean in this college, who has to pick up your food, because what that is an expression of you thinking that you're more important than them, and that we would want to honour them. So we're going to put as much food as we can in the bin to make their job as easy as possible, so that they can polish windows rather than pick up floors. So that's a kind of example. And then when boys breach it, you pick them up, and then a consequence may be, well, they get to miss a lunchtime break, or they get to do some work around the college to help them reflect upon what it is and why they're doing that. So, there are lots of little things around classroom behaviour, sporting teams, when you're away on camps and things like that, they have guidelines and consequences. And ultimately, I've had students in my life and my experience across a number of schools where I think the best thing that's ever happened to them has been an absolute shock, because they have pushed boundaries, and they felt that they would never, they were beyond consequences. And sometimes you've had to take away the thing that they've loved. And at the time it hurt, but you see them years later and they reflect back on that and say that was the best thing that ever happened, because it was a wake-up call.
At ETS Rubasha Media, we help you become an industry leader. How? Well, we manage your podcast. A podcast is one of the most powerful ways for you to get your voice out there authentically, so you can teach and be an expert in your industry. And so once you have a podcast, once you're able to document like we're doing here and be able to put that into the marketplace, it positions you as a leader. Now, what we do with that is now we position our CEOs to be speakers, right? So you could just be doing what you love, working on your business and speaking on workshops, having speaking engagements, hosting workshops. So we have an availability once you become a client here at ETS Rubasha Media, whether we're managing your podcast and your personal brand, to be on the list of one of our speakers. So now you can get booked for speaking engagements. If you want to apply for that, if you want to apply for the select few clients who we can be represented out in the world, so we can market you speaking to so many people, being that industry leader, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger. It's the only way you're going to be an authority. People want to see you in front of other people. In their mind, they see you as someone who is important, someone who is valuable. When you become highly valuable, you become highly remembered, and you become highly paid. So you can become here representing us, so we can be marketing you out there in the world, just like we do for our clients. You do have that opportunity. So if you want to get in touch for that opportunity to have your podcast managed and be put up for a speaker, connect with us below. Thanks.
It made me realise I was selfish and, I didn't care about other people. And when you took it away, I realised that I had to change my behaviour. And I think we shouldn't shy away from that. I think we're very frightened nowadays that if we have consequences for behaviours, that somehow it'll impact students' mental health. I disagree with that. I think if you build resilience over time, then you'll be able to handle that. You won't fall apart when something goes wrong, or you make a mistake and you have to pay the price for it. That's what happens in life, right? Life's not, a golden roller coaster that you just cruise through without any problems or challenges. You have to bounce back. I think for me that, going back to our earlier conversation, I think that's something I probably learned from my dad in particular, was just the ability to bounce back. And I think nowadays we define that as resilience, but it was like, if you get knocked down, don't give up. Work out why you got knocked down, go back better the second time and see if you can push through. And I think in this job, for me, over my last 18 years here, I think that's been one of the things that would define my leadership, has been my ability to, be confronted by some pretty horrible situations, things where I've felt like walking away because it's just too hard. But I've remembered why I'm here. And it goes back to that, like, I'm here for the boys. I'm here for the next generation. I'm doing a work that I believe I'm called to. So just get up, go back and have another go. And I think that's a great leadership quality, but it's hard. It takes a toll sometimes. And the best way to protect yourself from some of those challenges is to be surrounded by a handful of really good people that you trust and who encourage you, and also call you out if they think you're not being very wise or smart about the decisions you're making. I think that's having good people who speak in your life is a very important thing, especially for men. Right? I think women are really good at doing that. I think men maybe not so good, and we should work on that. It's a key part of keeping yourself accountable.
I think this conversation is so powerful, reason being, like you said, the state of where we are in society. Like, you talk about consequences, we're living in a day and age where people want to coddle people, right? Oh no, don't put them through this, but that's actually making things worse, right? We're living in a day and age where we're losing that masculine essence to be in there, to have your principles, morals, values you stand by. I'll give you a story when you talk about consequences and how it relates back later in life. When I went to school, the presentation was always so important, right? The way you have your tie, is your shirt tucked in? Yeah. At the time, I probably didn't see the value in it. Yeah. My dad, and from his, family, that was an important thing. His dad would always instill the presentation. My dad would go into an interview for a truck driving job and he'd go in a suit. Right? Who goes into a suit in the truck driving job? So, yes, dad would say those things, I go to school and we get in trouble here. If your shirt was untucked, 10 years later, I'm in the business world. I stand out in the room every single time because of why? Yeah. The presentation. Yeah. Yeah. I see these school kids. I was coming here and they're in the tie. I look and I said, that was what it was for. Yeah. That's what it was for. And that's what we're talking about. That essence as a young man, to come in, to present yourself well, to speak well, to have that resilience. That is what you've been thinking about for a long time.
If you really enjoyed this video, make sure to click here, and I'm sure you're going to love that one.